Welcome everybody to Cornerstone Talk Part 2 or Round 2. This is the second one of a series, an ongoing series in which we are going to bring in local entrepreneurs and business people to share with you how they made it in the local community and to give you tips to help you to move your Canadian dream along. So tonight we have the privilege of welcoming Micheal Palmer, who is going to talk to you and I'll allow him to introduce himself, but he's going to talk to you about LinkedIn and how to leverage LinkedIn in your job search. Micheal and I have known each other for a number of years. And what I think is very relevant for you guys to hear is that we used to do talks at what was called the BC HRMA, the BC Human Resources Management Association. And we used to do talks to newly arrived professionals, giving them advice about CVs, about LinkedIn, about various ways to develop their career. And what I think is very encouraging is that when I now have returned back to Vancouver and looked on my LinkedIn to try and connect and reconnect with these guys, they were all at the beginning struggling and wondering what they were going to do. And now a lot of them are in some fabulous positions. So they have lived the Canadian dream or are living it. And it's just fantastic to see that. So I'm going to hand over to Micheal Palmer. And thank you very much. We'll see you soon.
Thanks, Andrew and Anastasia. I'll start with maybe a brief introduction of who I am. So my name's Mike. I go by Mike. I only go by Micheal Andrew when I'm in trouble. So I go by Mike most of the time. I am the Director of Talent Acquisition at Canfor. And for those of you who know Canfor or don't know Canfor, we're a global forestry and wood products company. So we grow trees, we cut them down, we make lumber, we make pulp, we make biofuel. There's a lot of different stuff that we do with our product, but we're headquartered in Vancouver and we have operations in Canada, the US, Sweden, China, Japan, all over Europe, all over Asia as well. So I'm very happy to be here tonight. As Andrew said, we've known each other for quite some time, and it's always fun to do events with Andrew for a number of reasons, and maybe sometime in the Q&A you can ask me maybe my favorite. I won't start with that, but maybe we'll end with that. So what I want to talk to you tonight about is probably the easiest or the best way to get out there and get networked to find a job. And we use the title Leveraging LinkedIn in Your Search, but really what I'm going to talk about today is I'm going to do a quick refresher on social media and why it's so powerful. And then we're going to dive into LinkedIn. And then I'm going to show you how to really use it, because it's not just a place where you can go and apply to jobs. It's a place where you can network, and network is the key word to getting jobs these days. It is not about, applying to jobs. And for those of you who have tried sending in resumes, that is not the most successful way to get your name in front of the right people. So we're going to talk about that today. Throughout, if you have any questions, Anastasia will either notify me by chat or we'll wait till the end and do a Q&A at the end. I think that's the plan, isn't it, Andrew?
Yeah, that's it.
So we're going to start with a very basic, what is social networking? It has changed so much in the past 10 years. I remember the first time I did a presentation like this, people would say, like, what is social networking? Facebook was pretty new. That's how old I am. Facebook was pretty new. LinkedIn was pretty new, and they've all evolved. What's interesting though, is that the stalwarts are still the powerhouses. So the Facebooks and the YouTubes and the LinkedIns are still the big powerhouses. As a talent acquisition or a recruiting team, we're finding that we're able to use tools like Snapchat and TikTok and Pinterest and Glassdoor and a number of different tools to be able to do recruiting. But if you're looking for a job in a professional environment, I'll tell you right now that the place to start, and probably the place where you'll end, is LinkedIn. So we'll dive into that in a minute. So when we talk about job seeker and social networking sites, we probably have 20 or 30 different social networks that we use to do recruiting on today. But most of our advertising and most of our marketing dollars go to 3 different places. They go to Indeed, which is an obvious place because there's a ton of jobs posted there. We go to LinkedIn because that's where we find most of our professional hires. And although we don't go directly to Facebook, we do a lot of marketing. So how many of you, maybe just a show of hands, and only a few of you are on video, but you can just put up your hand and I'll imagine that I can see you. That how many of you though, when you're on Facebook or you're on a different social site or you're on even just a website, you see ads pop up for different things. And sometimes those are for jobs. If you're interested in jobs with this organization, click here. We use a lot of different, anyone? You've never seen those that pop up? Or that really creepy technology, you know, you're looking for a new dog bed. Speaking of dogs, you know, you're looking for a new dog bed and then you're looking through your Facebook feed and all of a sudden all you see are feeds to dog beds for sale. Well, that's algorithms, and we use the same thing when we're marketing jobs, and especially in the smaller communities where we're recruiting. So that is more likely where we're going to use things like Facebook and Twitter, not to market directly, but to buy ad space with them to get our jobs placed for people that are looking for jobs in those geographies. So the difference between those three is that on LinkedIn, we post jobs and we find candidates. On Facebook, we find active candidates and drive them to our site. And the same with Twitter. We don't actually advertise or post jobs on Twitter. We get traffic from Twitter and we drive it to our career site. The big difference between those three, in case you didn't know, LinkedIn is a professional site, Facebook is kind of a professional site, and Twitter is for the former, soon to be former president of the United States, and that's where his venue is. So no commentary there, no political comment, just those are the three different areas. So when we, and believe it or not, and I know recruiters tell you that they don't look, but they do, we all do. When we have a serious candidate for a job, we also check out your Facebook. If we can find you on Facebook, we'll check you out. And some of the biggest turnoffs are listed here. And I just want to bring them up and say that, you know, just because marijuana is legal in BC or Canada doesn't mean that most employers are comfortable with the prolific use of it, because it's still, remember, a lot of the people who are doing the buying, those hiring managers, a lot of them have been around the block and they're a little bit older and they're not really necessarily comfortable, or they're quite conservative when it comes to that. So spelling and grammar in tweets or posts, those are important. So if you're not taking English classes, make sure you're taking English and communication classes, because they're critical. Like, proper grammar is critical. So many of us talent acquisition people, if we've got two great candidates and someone uses proper grammar and someone doesn't, it doesn't matter what the job is. It doesn't. You're going to fall to second place without good grammar. So why bother using social media? So job boards are still a big part, despite all the marketing that you see out there. We hire probably 60% or 65% of all of our candidates we hire come in through job boards. However, there's a big difference. Remember what industry we're in? We're in forestry. We run lumber mills, we run pulp mills, we run biofuel divisions. 80% of our workers are blue collar production workers working in our mills. We have a very high usage of job boards, but of the 20% that are they're more professional, whether that's supervisory roles, management roles, or corporate roles, whether that's in finance, HR, IT, whatever the department within the organization, those groups within our organization, we do most of our recruiting on LinkedIn. We post our jobs on LinkedIn, we source on LinkedIn. Does anyone want to guess what our largest source of candidates are on LinkedIn? And I know no one can ask questions right now, so it's a little bit of a rhetorical question, so I'll have a little fun with it. But at the end of the day, we get most of the people that we end up hiring are people that are referred to us through the social networking capabilities of LinkedIn. So we'll come back to that in a few minutes, but a lot of our, and if you look at this stat right here, 40% of job seekers credit a referral from a professional or a personal contact or online social network. So 40% of all the people, and this is not a recent stat, this is 2017. So I know that this number is bigger now because the world is changing and going in this direction. So again, why use social media? Social channels that source the highest quality candidates. This is a survey that's done by, and this is recent, this is 2020. What a great year that was, huh? 2020. So in the last 12 months, this is a survey done by to thousands of recruiters. The social channels that source the highest quality candidates, the number one is LinkedIn with 67%. Facebook is 34, Glassbook 24, Instagram 23, and Twitter 21. Who thought that Instagram would be a great place to source candidates, huh? Social media channels that are used most for recruiting, 72% of recruiters indicated that they use LinkedIn for recruiting. LinkedIn is the big boy on the block when it comes to professional recruiting. So LinkedIn, it's used by many recruiters to find job candidates. According to LinkedIn, of course, this is a LinkedIn stat, so I don't know how valid it is, but according to LinkedIn, users with complete profiles are 40 times more likely to receive opportunities through LinkedIn. 40 times. So if you just have your name, where you live, and your last job, and maybe your most recent education up there, and it's a skinny down profile, you are going to be 40 times less likely to be looked at than someone who's got their full work history, their full experience, and a lot more things. And we're going to dive into what those things are, because the construction of your profile is critical. Even if you're networking with someone and you're getting a referral, the very first thing a recruiter is going to do is they're going to look at your profile on LinkedIn. And I'll tell you from personal experience, the kiss of death in recruiting is when someone refers a candidate to me and then I look and I can't find them on LinkedIn. That is like the biggest no-no. And the reason it is because it seems like someone's got something to hide, because it's such a prolific source of candidates, not just in North America, but globally. It is a global tool. It is very heavily saturated in North America. You can find job postings through LinkedIn jobs, groups, individual postings, etc. So we're going to dive into that as well. But you can also, and this is the big one, you can find hiring managers, company information, connections that might be directly connected that you're, and that's power. Information is power. And this tool puts the power in your hands, not just in the recruiters. Andrew's heard me say this many times, and even on some of the consulting that I've done with Andrew on his job searches. The most important person in the job search is the person conducting the job search, meaning that you have to take the power into your own hands if you want to be successful searching for a job. Posting, applying to jobs on LinkedIn, applying to jobs on Indeed, and sending out resumes may be a numbers game. But through personal referrals, I've been at Canfor now for 2 years, and I have had in the last 15 years, 6 different jobs in the last 15 years. And one of them was consulting, and I had 20 different clients doing consulting. Every single one of my consulting gigs and every single one of my jobs was through my personal network, not through me posting and advertising or applying to a job. So it is really critical, especially when you move further up in organizations into senior, more leadership roles. It's who you know, it's not where you can find a job posting. This is critical. So that's why I highlighted it, that you can find hiring managers, company information, and connections that might be directly connected to the company that you're interested in. I hope that makes sense for everyone. So a little bit about LinkedIn. Hopefully most of you have used it or seen it or had the opportunity to play around with it a little bit. LinkedIn's homepage is really where everything starts. And actually LinkedIn has done, especially since Microsoft acquired LinkedIn, LinkedIn has done a fabulous job putting everything together on the main page. Way better than other social networks. Everything is there. If you look up here, you can see, my network. That's where I can click and find people in my network. I can search for jobs. I can communicate through messaging. And for the record, I'm not a big fan of LinkedIn messaging, but it is what it is. I get notifications here. I can see who viewed different things that I post. I'm fairly active on LinkedIn. I won't say I'm hyper active on LinkedIn, but I'm fairly active on LinkedIn. I'm consistently posting new articles. I share events when I'm speaking. I share articles that I write or different things like that. So that's where it all starts with the homepage. So now we're going to dive into the different elements of LinkedIn. So the very beginning of it, I like to start with talking about your profile, because your profile is your brochure in the world. So, and no, I don't have a premium account. I just saw that note pop up. I don't have a premium account. I'm an admin for our company, but I don't use the premium features because I don't actually do recruiting anymore. But within this, within the profile, there's a couple things that are important. One is that I look at the profile as a recruiter. I look for the photo. I look for the background photo. I don't, I look for the title and also the tagline. My tagline doesn't show because this is where I would go to edit my own profile, but my tagline on my profile is elevating talent acquisition beyond the run of the mill. And that's my sense of humor because I work for a company that mills wood and pulp. So elevating recruiting beyond run of the mill just means making it better every day. That's my focus. So within this, I also like to dive into the profile part of it, that the about section, which is that's the one thing that I read. If I read anything on someone's profile, I always read this section that's about. So I like to personalize it and I like to write it from the first person. And the reason I do that is because it's me telling the reader what I'm all about. It's not Mike written in the third person. Mike is excited to bring us a unique perspective. It sounds like I hired someone to write it. Whereas if I write, I'm excited to bring my unique perspective of talent acquisition to Canfor. And then I talk about my team and what I want to do and why I'm at Canfor and what I do there. So this personalization of this about section, this is actually a few paragraphs. If you look at my live profile, you can see that I have a few paragraphs of first I start what I do at Canfor, and then I go into a little bit about me and my background, my professional background, not my personal background. I don't talk about my wife and my kids or my dog. I'd like to talk about my dog, but I want to also point out that the profile photo across the top there, it fits in really well with our company culture because we're a forestry company, but I like to hike. And this is actually at the top of a mountain that I hiked up last summer. So it's a really cool photo that I took. So that's how I get my personal element in there.
Hi, Mike. Just a quick question. Do you think it would be better if you showed us your slide? Do you have that the details? Perhaps we could share your screen and we could see.
I would be happy to share.
That would be awesome because it would be so good to see those points visually. Thank you very much.
My pleasure. I should make sure I didn't put anything on there I'm not supposed to have. I'm just kidding. Just bear with me a moment while I share my screen. Oh, the window disappears. Oh, there we go. Okay. So change sharing. Yeah, challenge me with technology. There we go. Share screen. Where's... Can you see that now?
Yes, awesome. Thank you. We can see your LinkedIn profile. Is that what you'd like to show?
So my LinkedIn profile, yes. So on here, I have a little bit about me, but the about section, so I'll just expand it so you can see. It's only two short paragraphs. It's not a big write-up about what I do. I just talk about why I'm excited about my job. And I love my job because I get to do some really cool stuff. And I love to share that I'm excited about my job because I get to do some really cool stuff. And I also like to give a short bio of my background so that people can see, if someone's looking at my background, they can see, you know, it includes 10 years of being a specialty consultant. I've run my own business. I've worked for some very big organizations, and I've worked globally. So a lot of those things are really important in my background. And I can also show, and I'm getting all these invitations from people on this call, I bet, to join. So it's getting rather large. What's going on? There we go. So some of the stories that I like to share, last year we won, 2020 Best Place to Work. And I shared that, and actually it went kind of nuts on LinkedIn. And I got some 8,000 hits on LinkedIn, which is really powerful. That really is very good for our company brand. It's also really good for my personal brand. So that was really exciting for me to see that with, 139 people liking it and 14 comments, and all of them were positive because it's LinkedIn. It's not Instagram. So that's like, this is really exciting stuff to be able to share these types of things. So I do in the presentation, though, I'm going to go back to the presentation, Anastasia, because I actually drilled down on some of the details and I want to make sure that I capture them all. And we can come back to my profile later on. And I'm going to share the screen again with this one. Is it showing again? Are we back?
Yes, it's showing. We can see everything perfectly.
Awesome.
Thank you.
So a couple things that I see on profiles very frequently that I would just point out, if you're going to do something, do it right. So here's the tips from Mike. Number one, use a full headshot, professional looking headshot. And just remember that LinkedIn is a business network. It's not really a social network. It is, but it's a business network. Think of work, not play, and leave pictures that show your fun personality in Facebook or other social networks. However, I will say that I think it's okay to show your personality without getting too personal. So I like photos that show a little bit of humor or a smile or a little engagement. Andrew, I remember for years, and maybe I'll just, if you can stand up and do this, but for years, Andrew's profile picture was him doing this. He was speaking at a presentation, and his profile picture was Andrew, like, hey, and it was Andrew being Andrew, and that's totally cool. But it wasn't goofy. It was just at like he was presenting a training session or something along those lines, and that's Andrew. That's who he is. So some examples of this. And these are actual ones that I've pulled from LinkedIn. So this gentleman is a principal consultant, national security programs at Hewlett Packard. That means this guy who's showing a surfing picture has a security clearance in the US, can work for the US government on highly secure topics. And this is the photo that he picked. Not probably the best way to portray the serious role that he's in. I mean, he's in a pretty serious role. This was my favorite. I don't know, Andrew, if you remember one. And I blocked out his name. So this is a CPA, or certified professional accountant, who helps small business owners save truckloads of cash on their tax returns. The first thing I thought when I saw this profile picture was, oh my goodness, I wonder how many years he spent in jail. Because he looks like he's going to cheat the IRS or CRA. And it just from the photo. The next one, I see these all the time. The picture, I didn't really have a good profile picture, so I just picked one that makes me look. It was at a wedding, and my boyfriend had his arm around me, so I decided I was going to use a photo instead of a professional headshot. We said earlier about the beers. Artist at Rockstar Leads. You know what? I'll say that given the nature of what this guy does, I don't mind the cat picture all that much, but it still shows, I think employers, if you're looking for a serious role, they'll see the cat or the pet or the dog or the emu or whatever your pet is, and they will likely take a pass. And it's amazing how fast people can make a judgment. My picture is just a simple photo that one of my team members took, and it's right outside of our office at Canfor. And I'm not wearing a tie because I don't remember ever wearing a tie, and it's professional enough, but it's casual, and it's me. And Andrew knows me well enough to know that that's me. That's who I am, except when I'm, hyper and like I am right now. So I hope that makes sense for everyone about the photo. Experience in education. So in this section, I see people that write their experience like they're writing a resume, and that is not what this is. So the experience section is, to me, an opportunity to say, hey, I work at Canfor, and this is what I do. And if you look there, what it says, I lead the talent acquisition team at Canfor. Leveraging our collective experience, we are elevating the talent acquisition function impact on Canfor's business, period. That's what I do at Canfor. It's simple, it's succinct, it's clear, and I use the opportunity shamelessly to market jobs. So I put a link in there that says, if you're interested in jobs, check out our career site. And then in the background, again, notice that it's written in first person. When I talk about the 10 years prior to me joining Canfor, I owned my own business, and I leveraged my knowledge and experience in recruitment leadership across various industries, helping customers ramp up recruitment effectiveness and business impact. And you can read it at your leisure, but the point is that I'm just very simply stating what I did as a consultant, all of the different roles that I've had. So the second piece of that is education. Really clearly, I'm not a big fan of multiple letters, although, if you want to put MBA, BA, BEd, BSc, or whatever your degree is, and all those different things, that's absolutely fine. I'm just a big fan of simple. I went to Ryerson, I took HR. I went to California Coast, and I took business. I went to Sheridan, and I took music. So those are the three things that I've done education-wise. And I could get into a lot of the courses that I've taken, but I choose not to because I've taken a lot of courses. And it could really muddy up but I will often consolidate. And I think it's on my profile where I've consolidated a lot of the different training, project management courses, or things like that I've included. And then as an employer, I'm a big fan of volunteer experience, just because I think there's an opportunity for all of us are fortunate enough to live in one of the greatest cities in the world, in Vancouver. And I don't know if we all live in Vancouver, but for those of us who do live in Vancouver, it's a pretty amazing city. And if we have, enough funds to go to school, we probably have enough blessing in our life to be able to give something back. But that's just a personal opinion. I like to show where I volunteer. I'm a big fan of Make-A-Wish because, for those of you who don't know, it helps really sick kids have something to look forward to and something to have hope about. But anyway, I like to highlight those things. And if you do volunteer, for goodness sakes, put it on your profile on LinkedIn. And then publications. I've written a lot of stuff. I haven't written a lot lately. Actually, I have written a lot lately, but I haven't published them on LinkedIn. So this was a reminder when I was preparing for this presentation that I should probably upload some of the writing that I've done recently. But I find that the writing, especially as a consultant, or if you're trying to establish yourself as an expert in any field, to have a little bit of writing or some wisdom or some thought-provoking articles, or even short articles about what you do or where you work, I think these things are quite powerful. And then skills and endorsements. I find that a lot of my team will look at the level of skills and endorsements more than they look at education and work experience, because this is validation in my network that I actually know what I'm talking about. So I can put up a LinkedIn profile and say whatever I want, that I'm an expert in talent acquisition, talent management, or recruiting, but I've got over 100 people in my network that say I'm an expert in all three of those. And I think the number in talent acquisition is something like 400, and I only have 1,800 people in my network. So like a quarter of the people have taken the time to put out that I know what I'm talking about with talent acquisition. And this takes time to build. So patience is really important with LinkedIn. Networking and using the tool is important. This is not a tool for a quick fix. If you've never been on LinkedIn and you create a profile and you get 2 or 3 people that you're networked with, That is only the beginning. You have to work it. And it's just like 20 years ago, we used to go to trade shows and collect business cards, and we would phone people and keep them on our Rolodex. This is my Rolodex. And I don't just reach out to my network when I'm looking for a job or I need something. I reach out to people in my network just to say, hey, how are you doing? Happy New Year. How are things going? How are you guys dealing with COVID? I'm curious, taking a straw poll in groups that I participate in, who's having this problem with this or this problem with that. So LinkedIn is something that we can leverage. And then lastly, before I get into actually how to use this, get recommendations. I have 42 people that have recommended me on LinkedIn, and I control the ones that go out there, but I have never received a recommendation that I wasn't proud to put on my profile. Every single one of them that I've received, I'm proud to put out there because they're, most people who write them are genuinely happy to provide them. And the ones that aren't happy to provide them don't. So that's okay. I mean, I haven't wowed all of my customers in my life, just most. And these are important because as a recruiter, if there are recommendations on here, this saves a lot of legwork about your validity, maybe not in the initial search, but if you're one of 2 or 3 final candidates and 2 of the 3 candidates have a lot of really awesome recommendations and then the third one doesn't, again, it's just an opportunity when it's a very competitive job market out there. Do everything you can to help yourself stay on top. So now I'm going to jump into the last part of this presentation before we go to questions. So it's going to take me a few minutes to get through this, so I'm not quite done yet. But searching for jobs on LinkedIn in itself is really cool. And I'm just going to dive into jobs. It's really easy to find on the homepage. You click on jobs, and it takes you to a job search page. Because I'm pretty active on LinkedIn, it automatically recommends jobs for me based on my profile and what I've looked for in the past, even though most of the time I've looked for jobs, most of the time I've looked for jobs that are not, they're for competitor jobs because I want to see the way our competitors advertise and market jobs. So you'll see here that my most recent job search was Canada, Greater Vancouver area for Canfor. And that means that I was looking for jobs that were posted for Canfor, so I could take a look at them and spot check them. In here, I can search through and find jobs. And let's say this happens to be a job that I would probably be qualified for. So it showed up in my LinkedIn feed as something that I might be interested in. And if I clicked on this vice president talent acquisition job with Lululemon, hopefully we've all heard of Lululemon, but how many of us know someone who works at Lululemon? Probably only a few of us. And this is the tool, and we're going to dive into how to use this. So you have 2 choices when you see this job posted that you're interested in. Number one is I can click apply, and it'll take my LinkedIn profile and it'll put my name in. However, you can see right on this job posting that there are already 55 people who've applied. And I would assume that given that it's LinkedIn, that half of the people at least are reasonably qualified for the job. So of the 55, 27, 28 people are likely pretty well qualified for the job. Now, if I put my resume in there or I apply with LinkedIn right now, what are my chances of being noticed as a candidate? Unless the person who happens to be looking at my background happens to know who I am or happens to go and do the extra work to figure out who I am, what are my chances? They're pretty low. So 1 in 27 is not good odds. In my opinion, those aren't good odds. So how do I maximize the chances of me being successful in my job search? I stop with the apply. I don't click on apply, and I ask for a referral. That's the first thing I would do. So I happen to have 2 direct connections that work at Lululemon, and both of them I know quite well. And I would have no trouble clicking on that button, ask for a recommendation, and up would pop these 2 people, and I could ask either one or both of them to recommend me or refer me into the position for vice president of talent acquisition. Now, let's say I didn't know anyone who worked at Lululemon, which is probably in a lot of cases for you, more likely. So I go back and I look, okay, well, let's search for Lululemon as a company. And I'm going to start. I know they're hiring at Lululemon. I know what the job is. Let's go back and look for Lululemon as a company. And then the first thing that pops up are a list of all of the people that work at Lululemon that are within 2 degrees or 3 degrees of separation from me. And the first one that pops up, so I'm going to go back and show you that the person who posted this job was Taz Goal. So Taz she's actually a talent manager. She's not a recruiter. She's a talent manager at Lululemon, but she's the one who posted the job. She's probably the one that I should be talking to about this role. So I would figure out a way to connect with Taz. And if you look at her profile, it says that she is a second connection to me. That means we each know people in common. And in this case, we happen to know quite a few people in common. So what does the number say there? Sorry, I've covered it. 18 connections I have in common with Taz. And I can connect by clicking on right down here at the bottom. You can't see my cursor, but at the bottom where it says connections, and up will come a list of those 18 connections. And I have now my pick. Oops. I have now my pick of the 18 people that who do I know best? And I'm going to start reaching out to them if I'm serious about this job. So if I am serious about this job, I know Marlene because Marlene used to be the director of HR at Cal Tire in Vernon, but now she works in New West. I know her fairly well. I know Derek fairly well. I know Trevor quite well. Trevor is the manager of talent acquisition at Ritchie Brothers. Oops. I keep sliding forward. I think I'm clicking accidentally. Benz, I know very well. I've done lots of recruiting with Benz. Benz is a senior director at Canfor, so we work together quite closely. And I would reach out to them and say, hey, Benz, do you know Taz Goal fairly well? And if so, would you be willing to introduce me to her? They have a job open that I'm very interested in. Now, full disclosure, I probably wouldn't ask Benz because Benz and I work together at Canfor, and I wouldn't want Benz to know that I was looking for a job. But I would be comfortable reaching out to Trevor or to Marlene, or going back to the one that I showed you earlier, which was Natalie DuPont, she's a manager of executive recruitment at Lululemon. So I know her quite well, and I'd be very comfortable picking up the phone and calling her. So that's how we leverage LinkedIn. The point is that it's asking. So I find that there's 2 things that people do wrong today, is that they just assume that applying for a job is enough, and it never ever is, or very seldom is. And number 2, they're afraid to ask for help. So asking for help and asking for a connection, asking for a referral, asking for an introduction is great. I get asked probably 10 or 15 times a week for an introduction. And it's often from people that I don't know all that well. When they'll say, you know, I attended a session that you did and we met, and I know we haven't spoken, but would you be willing to introduce me to so-and-so? And I'll gladly make the introduction. I won't make a recommendation because I don't know. If I don't know you, I won't make a recommendation, but I'm always willing to make an introduction. And I found that most people in Vancouver, it's the same thing. Most people are open to making that introduction and to make that connection work. So with that note, and I can't believe I talked for 52 minutes, but who's counting? Time flies when you're having fun. I have lots of time for questions though. So Anastasia, please, we didn't talk about this before. Let me know how we're going to ask these. Are you going to read them, or do I have to read them off the?
So there are some questions that have been asked in the chat, and the participants have asked me to read them to you. But if somebody would like to ask a question, they feel free to raise your hand as well. Use the raised hand button in the participants tab. So we could do this both ways.
Okay, I'm going to stop my share though, so you can actually see me a little better. Is that better?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay.
So we have a question from Lena, if that's okay for you. Lena Escobar is asking if her first experience was as a cashier and now she's working with an agency of study and immigration here in Vancouver. Do you recommend putting her background as a cashier on LinkedIn?
It depends how many years of experience you have. So obviously I had jobs in high school and while I was going to college and university, and there's even a couple early jobs. And I do that because I'm a little concerned because I'm old, that people might look at my background and go, oh my gosh, he had a job in like 1990, really? Oh, he's old. So that's why I leave that off. But if you've only had 2 or 3 jobs, I think it's important to show that you have had different jobs. I wouldn't have a big section. I would just say cashier working at this location. Um, but I would put something in the description that says what you learned and what you really enjoyed about doing that. And that may be something like, um, I truly enjoyed serving the customers and helping them get out as quickly and efficiently as possible. I learned a lot about myself and my work habits or things like that. I think it's important to put it there. But if you've got 5 years of work experience since, and it's not relevant to your current career, then I would recommend not putting it on. Is that fair? Okay.
Thank you very much. And I can see Shira has raised her hand. If you'd like, go ahead.
Hi. So I think, well, speaking for myself, since I'm an international student and most of my work has been out of the country, like out of Canada, how do you recommend, like, I mean, companies and the job positions? Obviously, I would have to translate it, but how does that would work?
Well, personally, I think, Shira, that work experience is work experience, and we should, be very transparent about where that work experience was. If you're concerned about it, I'd also recommend, though, that you look at ways that you can translate what you learned to the Canadian job market and your understanding of the Canadian job market. The other thing that I recommend putting, as long as you have work authorization, is to make sure you mention somewhere on your profile that you have work authorization, because that's the one thing that unfortunately employers do shy away from. If they see most of your experiences outside of the country and they don't see that you have some sort of work authorization, I wouldn't get into detail, but just say authorized to work in Canada for any employer or something like that. I think that's important. But most importantly, Shira, if you take anything away from this, it's that you really do need to network. So if you network with someone who gets your foot in the door at a Lululemon or Herschel or Arc'teryx or wherever, that's the connection going to say, most of her experience has been outside of the country, but I know her and she's awesome. And that's what's going to get you the interview and the opportunity. So really focus on the networking, especially if you haven't got any Canadian work experience. That's really critical. People buy, and for those of us who've ever done sales, Andrew, I know you have and I have, that people buy from people. And that's the same with recruiting. That's why referrals and introductions are so important, because if Andrew recommends someone to me, Andrew recommends someone to me, they're going to get an interview. Not necessarily going to hire them, but they are going to get an interview, because I know he wouldn't burn me. He wouldn't just do it for his own benefit. So does that help?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, good.
Great. And Zanya, you raised your hand. Have you changed your mind, or would you like to go ahead?
I would like to go ahead. For example, if I have enough duration or length and work experience in certain areas with stamp letters of recommendation, what is my probability of being hired immediately in an administrative position?
Well, again, I think it's, especially with entry-level roles, employers look at a lot of things other than just your work experience, right? So I'm not sure that I'm answering your question, but I'd really recommend that you still keep it pretty simple and pretty straightforward. And I think if you talk about your characteristics or your traits or what makes you a great employee, I think that's really important as well. I'm just, for the record, remember I said just a minute ago that people buy from people, but people are buying. So you guys are in sales. And if you're looking for a job, you're in sales. If you're single, you're in sales. So if you're looking for a job, you really do need to work on the way you present yourself in such a way that says, hey, I'm serious, I'm good at what I do, I'm competent, I'm able, and I'm really eager to work for you. Nothing gets me more excited than someone says, I am so excited about this job because this is exactly what I want to do. And this is the type of experience I really want to have in my background, because this is where I want to go with my career, because they're selling themselves. So regardless of all of those other things, you know, whether you write your profile and how you do all these things, remember that you're a salesperson when you're looking for a job. And if you write a really compelling cover letter or a really compelling resume, it's going to help. But again, what I said earlier, and I'll keep saying it over and over again, like a broken record, the record, you know, those black things that we used to put on a turntable and scratched. Anyway, so is that you need to network, you need to talk to people, and you need to ask for introductions and ask for recommendations and ask for referrals. Did I answer your question, Ziana?
Yes, yeah, but yes, because I'm not the only one that is going to be hired because I have the business, but I want to know that how can I hire someone, because, well, I want to know just the questions about hiring someone, but it explains everything. Don't worry.
Okay. I love the fact that you have a real microphone like I do. Yeah.
Thank you.
And I can see Mary would like to ask a question. You have your hand raised, and then we'll go over to Roy's question.
Okay, thank you so much. My question is around the experience that you're listing on your LinkedIn profile. I worked for a number of years, 18 in Vancouver, and then I lived overseas for 12 years. And when I came back to Canada, it was like a little bit difficult to find my feet. So I took work where I could.
Mhm.
And so are those things that I would just leave off because now I got a really good gig at Community Futures and that looks better maybe than the brief stint I had as an education assistant?
So I have two ways to answer that. One, when did you come back? Was it like 2008, 2009 by chance?
No, 2016. I
Okay.
came back in 2016.
Because I remember 2008, 2009, that was a mess. But you can either leave it off or you can put it on put it on with worked a variety of jobs, as I focused on what I wanted to do with my career or something along those lines, or while I reestablished residence and my network in the greater Vancouver area. Because that's really what you were doing. You were working in jobs while you were reestablishing your residence. Andrew's recently gone through that, having moved back from, I don't even know where you lived last, man. You moved all over the place. But so you can say that right in your, and I wouldn't necessarily highlight the jobs that you worked, but just say worked in a variety of positions as a reestablished residence and reestablished my network in the Vancouver market.
Yeah, because I'm picking up on what you said, that it's not a resume, it's not a CV, so it doesn't have to be chronological. So I'm thinking, could we just forget about that, because it's sort of although being able to facilitate and working in education, I guess that's a valid thing too. Working for a school board,
it's absolutely a valid thing, and I think all experience is valid, and it's all in the way we describe it. So if you worked as a cashier or as a teacher or whatever, and it didn't align to your career goals, but you learned something from it, I think there's a lot of power in that. I mean, I've worked in some very strange jobs, and I've taken way more from those jobs than some of the really the big titles that I've had, because I learned a lot. And frankly, Mary, I think that employers are excited about people who can try new things and aren't stuck in their old ways and can learn new things. So,
okay, great. Thanks, Mike.
You're welcome.
There is a question from Roy that came up, and he's asking me to read it for you. What things don't you want to see in a candidate profile or bio, and what should we avoid to prevent future rejections?
Well, just in general, I mean, it depends where you are in your career, but I think a lot of recruiters still look at, and I don't, but I think a lot of recruiters look at resumes or profiles that have multiple jobs over the last 10 years. Understandably, there are times when people move around jobs, like 2008, 2009, there was a lot of movement of jobs because frankly, the economy was a mess everywhere. And so, I mean, it's hard to avoid, but I think employers are looking for, at least 2 years out of you before you start looking for other opportunities. I also think that employers are looking for progression, and it doesn't necessarily mean like climbing the corporate ladder progression, like the old days where people would start as a cashier and then become a senior cashier and then become a team lead of the cashiers and then become a store manager and then become a regional manager and then become, it's not like that anymore. But progression is, I've worked in different industries in my career. So I've done recruitment management's been my thing for the last 20 years, but it's looked really different in a lot of different organizations that I've worked. And I've purposely taken jobs. I worked in, if you look at my background, when I was at Future Step, I was working in Washington, DC, and I was commuting from Vancouver, which was really stupid, but I was doing it. And I did it because I wanted to work in the security industry, and meaning, and I'm not talking about security like security guards. I'm talking like US state security. I'm a dual citizen, so I could get a security clearance. And I worked in some really, really cool stuff with contractors that do security work for the US government. And I did that on purpose because I wanted to expand my career. And when I talk to people about that, that's how I explain it. I put up with like 18 months being on the road because I wanted that breadth of experience in my background. So I'm not sure if I answered the question, other than we all look for some level of stability. So, and if there's not a lot of stability, explain why there's not a lot of stability. I look for a personal sales pitch, and I use that term really loosely, but I look for someone who's confident to say, I am really good at this. This is what I'm looking for, and this is my desire. And I'm also looking for people, things in backgrounds that talk about very positively about past employers. Let's face it, we've all had past employers that may not have been the best in the world, but you'll never catch me saying anything bad about one of them, ever. So, if it wasn't a good situation, find something good and talk about that.
Great. Thank you very much, Mike. I think we have some time for one last question from Anna. I can see you have raised your hand. Would you still like to ask a question?
Yes. So if I have some experience in one area and I'm looking to change my field, what do you recommend for me to put it in a LinkedIn profile?
I would put the things that you've done so far and the things that you're doing to prepare for the future career. So I would highlight if what you're doing in school now, if that's part of the plan to change careers, is it?
Kind of.
Yeah. So I would highlight that. I would highlight why you want to change careers without being negative about the past, but I would highlight why you're looking to change careers. And I would also highlight why you're attracted to the future career that you're going to have, and use your past experience as the springboard to it. So I'm preparing for my new career, and here's what my new career looks like, but here's how I'm going to leverage my past experience to prepare me for it. So what I learned from my previous jobs and how that will apply to my new job. And I think that sometimes, and even employers do this, but I think we get hung up on our experience instead of our want, because there's nothing that's powerful in this world than desire. It's crazy how I've hired people that are totally unqualified for jobs because their energy is so good. They're so focused on why they want to do what they want to do. They are so mentally prepared for it. And as opposed to hiring someone who's got a lot of experience and just walks in thinking, oh, this is going to be a piece of cake. I can do this all day long. So we train our managers inside of our company to hire for attitude and train for aptitude. And all that means is that hire the positive, outgoing, cheerful, desirous person who really wants to be successful. And let's focus less on the career experience. And lastly, I'll tell you, and this is probably the most important thing for students, be prepared to start at the bottom. Sorry, but be prepared to get your foot in the door. We hire a lot at Canfor, we hire a lot of interns, we hire a lot of summer students. And I talk to university grads, that just recently graduated from, just last week, I was talking to someone who graduated from SFU in January, graduated with a finance degree, him and 25,000 other people. And I said, dude, look for an internship. And he said, oh, I don't want to do an internship. I want to be a manager. And I said, I get that you want to be a manager, but you're going to have to be an intern or a summer job or a temporary position to get your foot in the door and start getting some experience. So be prepared. And I don't mean start at the bottom. That's a really negative way to perceive it, but be prepared to earn your, to work for what you're going to get. I see a lot of people that do career changes. I talked to a guy who was a lawyer making $150,000 a year, and he changed careers because he wanted to go into business, and he was very frustrated. He had a lot of great experience working with real estate law. But if you don't want to be a lawyer, that applies really well only if you want to be a realtor. It doesn't apply if you want to go be a finance person in a bank or and we hired him as an intern. He's 35 years old, and we hired him as an intern. And he's excited about his job, and he's doing extremely well. And I know within 3 or 4 years, he's going to be making pretty close to what he was making before because he's smart and he's hungry. And hungry is a big piece of it, but he had to be willing to start back at somewhere that was simpler. So just remember that you will move up faster because you're going to apply your previous work experience, and those things will all start to make sense together. But be prepared to take a little bit of a hit when you first start. It's going to be hard to find a leadership position if you don't have any business experience. And but network, because you'll very likely get interviews if you get personal introductions. I hope that's been helpful. And did I answer the question?
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much.
I get off on tangents, right?
Great, thank you very much. We have a few more questions coming up, but guys, if you'd like your questions to be answered, please feel free to post them on our social media under our blog post, and we will answer them after the session in the coming days. And I think it's 7:28. Andrew, would you like to say a few words, or Mike, perhaps some closing points?
Andrew, you're muted. It's 2021. You're not supposed to be muted anymore.
I'm unmuted, my good man. All right. Well, first of all, that was fabulous. I think it gives the students a pretty good idea of how to utilize LinkedIn. Guys, if you have any questions about LinkedIn, I can either ask Mike on your behalf, or you can connect with him, or you can come by and see me and we can discuss it, as well as things like resumes and cover letters. So anyway, just want to say thank you so much for coming in, being virtual and talking to our students. Really enjoyed it. Some great little pieces there. I think the biggest takeaway from my point of view, one of the biggest takeaways is the whole concept of networking and how you've got to work that network and don't expect it to start, to be there overnight, but to take time to nurture it and keep going and keep persevering, and you'll find what you're looking for. But it's really important. I appreciate you coming in and talking to us.
My pleasure.
Thank you so much.
You're very welcome. Can I just add one point? I have not updated my resume in 20 years. I haven't applied to a job. I haven't. And I've never, ever presented my resume. Even when I started working at Canfor, they said, "Can I get a copy of your resume?" And I said, "I don't know, can you?" So, and I'm not saying that you shouldn't have a resume, but that's how unimportant it is. Don't go spend $500 getting your resume done professionally. It's really not going to help. What's going to help is getting on LinkedIn and reaching out to people like Andrew and myself and getting connections and building out your network. Every time you meet someone, ask them, "Hey, can I connect with you on LinkedIn?" because when you start and work that network and start sharing things on network and LinkedIn and get yourself known on LinkedIn. And I know it sounds really salesy, but it really is powerful to get out there and be part of the community. That's our new social network for work. So take advantage of it, use it, because so few people do. When I get a candidate that reaches out to me on LinkedIn and says, hey, I know so-and-so introduced me, and I found out that you guys are hiring for this finance position. And would it be possible for us to have a chat about the role? Now, most of the time, I send them on to the recruiter and say, hey, can you at least have a phone conversation with this person? Except if they're rude, but that's very seldom. Most of the time, it's through personal connection. But it happens very infrequently where I get, because we post a lot of jobs. We hired like 1,500 people last year. And maybe 20 times people said, hey, Mike, I know this person. Would you be willing to talk to them about a role? So if you do it, you will really stand out. And if you want to stand out, do it. And it's hard. Yeah, it's a little scary, but man, that's where it's fun. It's scary, but it's fun. Anyway, have fun. Good luck with your careers. And by all means, reach out and connect with me on LinkedIn. And when you connect with me on LinkedIn, though, if you haven't already done so, because I think there's quite a few, if you haven't already, at least tell me where we met. And you can say from this presentation, because I get a lot of unsolicited that I just decline. If they're just unsolicited, I'd like to know where I know them from. Okay.
Fabulous.
Awesome.